Are you looking to increase your sales and boost your selling abilities to the max? Welcome to the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast with best-selling author Eric Lofholm. Eric has trained over 10,000 students, and they have generated over $500 million in sales increases over the last 20 years. One thing he understands is that being a lifelong learner is key to your sales success. Every week, Eric Lofholm interviews elite sales and business professionals and discovers what helps make them the legends they are today.
Hi, this is Eric Lofholm. I want to welcome all of you to the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast. And I have a very, very special guest today. Today, I'm joined by my sales coach and mentor. And in recent years, we partnered on projects as well, Dr. Donald Moine. And I've introduced him many times as who he is to me, which is the world's greatest sales mind. And I've had the privilege and honor of being able to learn directly from him now for nearly 20 years and or over 20 years. And so it's great to be with you today, Dr. Moine. Thank you for taking some time out so we could do this podcast and I can share you with my community.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Eric. Good morning, Eric. Good morning to our viewers. I know we're going to have folks from all around the world watching this, so I want to say good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. We've got some really exciting topics we're going to be discussing. So if you can't watch all of it right now, catch the rest later. It'll be available on YouTube and some other channels. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here.
So, Dr. Moine, I'm going to share with you how we're going to do the call today. It's going to be informal conversation. And I want to share this with you as a teaching point for all of our listeners. So we're going to do this podcast recording, and then I'm also going to transcribe it and look for different ways to benefit from the transcription. And then I want to take certain shorter clips and create smaller pieces of content. And so I estimate, and I'm also going to be including a portion of the transcript in the book, Continuous Sales Improvement. So I estimate it's going to be used like 10 or more different ways. And so as all of you are listening or watching, I want you to think about ways that you can repurpose your content to get even more value from the time that you're taking to create any content. And I thought it would be good to have you start off and share your backstory of how you got into helping people like myself increase their sales and go back to the UC Santa Cruz days. I, of course, know your story very well. We could start with the UC Santa Cruz and how that translated into you getting into sales consulting.
That's where it all started. I was very fortunate. I was attending the University of California at Santa Cruz, a beautiful campus located in the redwood trees right by the Pacific Ocean in Santa Cruz, California. That was in the 1970s. One of my fellow students was a guy named Richard Bandler. Our professor was John Grinder, a professor of linguistics. And Richard Bandler and John Grinder are absolutely brilliant. They are the two people who created neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which Time magazine has called the greatest breakthrough in psychology in the last 30 years. So I was there before it was even NLP. They called it the meta model, META, meta model, which means beyond. It's like the model of thinking and cognition and perception and linguistics. It goes beyond all previous models. And then it evolved into NLP. If you're not familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, well, of course you're familiar with Tony Robbins, the world's most famous motivational speaker and trainer. Tony, to a large degree, uses neuro-linguistic programming. He used to talk about it a lot. He doesn't much anymore. And I know he's very grateful to Richard Bandler and John Grinder. So I was studying it, got immersed in it. I went on to graduate school. I got a master's degree in marriage and family counseling. I did that for 2 years and really enjoyed it. But I figured out I don't want to do this for the rest of my life because, folks, I'll tell you a secret. The only time people go to see marriage counselors is when their marriage is falling apart. They don't do it for preventative maintenance. They're ready to kill each other, and they say, gee, maybe it'd be a good idea to go see a marriage counselor. And they come in and they talk about how much they hate each other, and they say, now you fix this, you fix the marriage. So I was always much more interested in business. My father had a small business with about 6 employees, and I was just fascinated by business. So I decided to go to graduate school. I got very fortunate. I was accepted into University of Oregon, which had a top 10 PhD program in psychology. And I did a triple major in social psychology, developmental psychology, and personality psychology, and studied a lot of linguistics. I carried that on. And when it came time to graduate with a PhD, you have to do a dissertation, which is an original contribution to the world of knowledge. It usually takes 2 to 3 years of research. So I decided to study sales superstars. I'd worked my way through 9 years of college as a salesman. I was pretty good. I was usually never the best in the company, which frustrated me. But in graduate school, I made enough money from my part-time sales job to be able to afford to buy a house right in the same neighborhood where my college professors lived, which kind of drove some of them crazy. How's this young kid in his 20s able to buy a house up here with us? And so that really sold me on sales. At that point in my life, I thought I was going to be a college professor, but I saw how little money they made relative to how much you could make in sales. So I spent about 2.5 years studying highly successful salespeople. I got permission to tape record them. I got permission to videotape some of them. And Eric mentioned he's going to be transcribing our interview today. Well, that's what I did, but I didn't have tools like Google, transcribe and all of these other shortcuts. I had to actually listen to the tapes, write every word down. It was very laborious. And I used tools that no one had ever used before. I used psycholinguistics. I used there's a tool called Transformational Grammar, which has nothing to do with regular grammar, but it analyzes the difference between the surface structure of the language and what's called the deep structure, what's really happening beneath the surface. And I was able to figure out things like storytelling techniques. All great sales superstars use stories, metaphors, word pictures, because people forget facts. Write this down. If you're taking notes, write this down. People forget facts. They forget product details. They remember stories. And I got lucky and my dissertation got published. Most PhD dissertations don't get published because nobody wants to read them. They are boring. But because this was about sales and our economy and business and making more money, it got published. It led to a cover story in Psychology Today magazine. And I started getting calls from all over the country where people wanted to hire me as a sales psychologist. And I was teaching at University of Oregon, and I gave up my little teaching job to go out and hang my shingle and tell the world I'm a sales psychologist, which no one had ever heard of then. That was the 1980s, early 1980s. And my college professor said, Donald, you are making the biggest mistake of your life. You're very lucky to get a job teaching at a major university. You're never going to be able to get another university teaching job if you leave. And the business world is going to chew you up and spit you out. They're going to use you. They're going to milk you for all your knowledge. And then, you're going to not have a job once they get all the knowledge from you. But I believed in myself. And, when you're young and crazy, you just have unbounded self-confidence. Well, that was me. So before I knew it, within a year, I was on Wall Street. I was training stockbrokers on Wall Street. And then I started working with Fortune 500 companies. And about 10 years later, I met a handsome young man, 21-year-old man named Eric Lofholm. It was working for a client of mine called Dante Pirano. And Eric, actually, you could tell that story about. You could tell the story about how we started off together. And I think you were on quota probation, weren't you?
Yeah, for all of you that are watching or listening, one of the reasons that I'm have such a strong relationship with Dr. Moine, and I'm so connected to him, is that when I met him and was introduced to his ideas, I was the bottom producer on the sales team that I was at. I was doing phone sales for a real estate education company, and I had been put on quota probation and was told I had one more month to hit quota or I'd be let go. And the quota was $10,000 in gross sales. And I don't know if I've shared this piece of the story with you, Dr. Moine, but Anthony Gonia, he was sitting next to me in a cubicle in Dante's office. He also was on quota probation. Mm-hmm. So I started being introduced to your ideas through our mutual friend, Tony Martinez. Mm-hmm. Dr. Moine had been coaching Tony for quite a while and had created incredible results. Tony did using Dr. Moine's techniques. And so Tony started teaching with me how to structure an effective sales presentation, how to put the close together, how to make an irresistible offer, how to use storytelling, things that you had shared with him. And that month I ended up doing 10,500 in gross sales, and the quota was 10,000. So I made quota by one sale. Anthony did 9,500, Dr. Moine, and they fired him. And when I was put on quota probation, like they told me, if you don't hit the quota, you're out. And I kind of questioned, like, is that really true? Like, would they really fire me? Well, Anthony was let go. The next month I did 51,000. I went from the bottom to the top on that team in 1 month. And then in September of that year, I don't know, 8 months later, I did 160,000 in a month doing front of the room selling using your techniques. And I've gone on to do millions and millions and millions of dollars in sales and have made this as a career. Really, the foundation of what I teach has come from the things that you wrote about in your dissertation and things you've learned in the books you've written and all the coaching that you've done. And what I want all of you to know that are watching or listening to this, there's a depth to what Dr. Moine is teaching, because he has likely done more research on the structure of effective sales presentations, sales scripting, studying sales superstars than anyone that's ever been on the planet, literally. And since what year did you start doing the sales consulting?
That was 1981.
81. So 91, 2001, so 40 years. 40 years.
Yep.
Dr. Moine has been working with sales superstars, people like myself. Mm-hmm. So there's the research that's been done, the practical selling that he has done in his career, and then all the one-on-one work, the script writing, so as you're listening to his ideas today, I want you to really listen, because the ideas do work and they transformed my selling. I've used the techniques and the strategies and the mindsets to find love in my life with my current wife, to, live in the home that I'm in, which is not a story for today, but I used the sales techniques to put a loan together that was basically, it wasn't going to happen, but because of what I've learned, and for hiring people to do joint ventures, I've used the techniques to make sales, to land my job with Tony Robbins. And so I'm forever grateful. And I know that you've done this for so many people, Dr. Moine, throughout the world, and that's really helped them. So why don't we talk next about what do you see as the characteristics of somebody who breaks through and becomes a sales superstar, like Tony Martinez has, or I have, and you've helped many, many people become millionaires with your teaching. What do you think takes somebody like me, who was a bottom producer, or Tony Martinez, who wasn't anywhere near what he is today? What makes them have the breakthrough?
Great question, Eric. There's a couple things, and I did a 4-hour boot camp yesterday, and this was sort of uppermost in my mind, because this was for insurance agents and financial planners. Those are two professions I've done a lot of work with, probably more work with insurance agents and financial planners than any other profession. And one of the things I've noticed is that they invest in themselves. And it's something that, as I look back on it, Eric, that really stands out about you and about Tony, because I was pretty expensive. We met in the early 1990s, and my rates are a little bit higher now, but relatively speaking, I was pretty expensive. And I don't know how Eric scraped together the money to hire me, but he hired me. And I'm going to talk about some of the other characteristics, but there's something that I found that, and on that, after I did that 4-hour boot camp, we had about 50 people in the boot camp from around the country, and about 6 or 7 of them contacted me. And some people in the training, they asked me how much, what is my rate? How do I work? And I explained it. And, some people thought, gee, that's kind of a lot of money. And other people thought, well, compared to, I consider myself kind of semi-famous. I'm not like Tony Robbins or Jay Abraham. Those guys are 100 times more expensive than me, and they have plenty of clients. So compared to them, I'm a bargain. But if you're used to getting training from the guy down the street, it's a certain financial investment. I call it the price of success. And but that's something that stood out to me. 6 or 7 people contacted me, and they said, Dr. Moine, I want to work with you. I want to, let's talk. I'm motivated. I want to grow. So you have to be willing to invest in yourself. And what I want to say, folks, is it's the best investment you can ever make. It is the best investment you can ever make, is to invest in yourself. If you're taking notes, write that down in 3-inch high letters. The investment in yourself has the greatest return on investment of anything. Bonds return about 5% per year. Real estate, according to the National Association of Realtors, and I've done some work for them, returns 5.5% to 6% per year. Some years a lot more. Some years, like this year, real estate's losing money in a lot of markets around the country. It's going down. Stock market on average goes up 8 to 10% per year. That's about one of the best investments available. But folks, from investing in yourself, if you find the right mentor, if you find the right system, with a lot of my clients, I say you should look for a 10-to-1 return. People like Eric, because Eric is so smart, he's so hardworking, dedicated, he's probably at 100-to-1 or more return on some of the ideas such as scripting. So that's something that you have to have. And the second thing is an open mind. And there are certain people who develop bad habits. And you can develop bad habits in selling. This is the way I was taught to do it when I was at my prior company. And or this is what Zig Ziglar said, or this is what someone else said. And I've got all those books. I have over 1,000 books in my library, a lot of sales books, persuasion, linguistics, business books, advertising books. And there's a lot you can learn, not just from me, but there's a lot of great sales trainers. There's so much you can learn from Eric, from other folks. But you cannot be totally wedded to an idea. The stuff that turns me on, that's gotten results in my life and for my clients, is stuff that's not based on theory. It's based on how human beings actually think, how they take in information, process information, make decisions, make buying decisions, and how they process emotions. Emotional processing also very important. Write this down in your notes. This is a 5-star bonus idea. I worked for Morningstar for 5 years. I wrote their practice building column. Practice building means business building for financial planners and insurance agents. And Morningstar is probably the most trusted name in the investment world for doing research. Well, I wrote their business building column for 5 years. And Morningstar, when they rate mutual funds, they're the number one evaluator of mutual funds. They rate them from 1 to 5. A 5-star mutual fund is the very, very best. Well, I like to bonus my clients with some 5-star ideas. And this is the 5-star idea. Actually, it just kind of slipped my mind there. I was thinking about my experiences with Morningstar, but it'll come back to me. We're talking about investing in yourself, having an open mind. The other thing I want to say is the third one, and I could talk for an hour just about characteristics of sales superstars, what distinguishes sales superstars from others. You have to be willing to try the ideas. So many people, you can go to the greatest training in the world, ladies and gentlemen. You can take notes, but if you don't practice, for example, in scripting, if you don't actually write out your scripts and practice them in front of a mirror. When I was training stockbrokers on Wall Street, I would walk up and down the streets, in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, practicing the scripts I was going to share with the stockbrokers. Because when I started, the way that they made money, it was live or die on the telephone. We had to make 200 smiles and dials each day. And, we were pitching the hot stock of the day. So I was writing out the scripts that these guys were using and women were using on the phone, and it's evolved. Now it's sophisticated, holistic financial planning, but you have to use what you learn. Don't just listen to the instructor and say, gee, that sounds pretty good. And, if someone hits me with that objection in a couple of weeks, I might try it. You have to look for opportunities to practice what you're doing. It's very much like athletics that, you have to you can't just read a book about how to hit a fastball. You have to have a pitcher throw you 100-mile-per-hour fastball and swing the bat a bunch of times and have someone there showing you how to adjust your grip and how to hold your fingers. And whatever the sport is, it's the same thing, shooting a basketball. Which Eric has been coached by one of the best, the guy who has the number one free throw shooter in the world. Eric has been coached by him, and Eric's son has been coached by this gentleman. So the final thing I want to leave you with, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, is that, folks, these techniques that I'm sharing with you, that Eric is sharing with you, they are not tricky sales techniques. They are not things you only use from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock in sales and then say, thank goodness I don't have to do that anymore. These are powerful techniques of human communication, human to human communication. As Joe Girard would say, Joe Girard was the world's greatest car salesman. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records. I studied his techniques. He called it belly to belly selling. When you're selling belly to belly, human to human. These techniques work with communicating better with your children, with your spouse, with your loved ones, with your neighbors. I've had a few little disagreements with my neighbors about like trees hanging over the fence and, just the typical things neighbors have disagreements about. And it just amazes me. These techniques are remarkably effective because you're going for win-win outcomes. It's not about tricking anyone or manipulating anyone. It's about producing win-win outcomes. You want to find, here's a 5-star bonus idea. Find their ultimate outcome. What is their desired outcome? What do they want? Find their desired state. If you're doing retirement planning, which that's where a lot of financial planners focus, is retirement planning and also insurance agents. Tell me about tell me about your dream retirement. Where do you and your wife want to retire to? Do you want to live here? Do you want to downsize? Do you want to move to Florida, to Las Vegas, to Washington State? Tell me about that. You get into their dreams, get into their goals. People cannot resist their dreams. Have a real conversation with them and then show them how they can achieve their desired state. Is one of the most powerful techniques that you can ever use. So, Eric, with that, I want to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on a couple of things that you said about finding somebody's desired outcome. And I got into a conflict this week with somebody, and I had sent an email that I thought was just a normal business email. And it completely offended this person. And they got livid. And it was just a normal email. But the way they read it. And so we ended up having this conversation. And man, it was ugly. I was being attacked, and it caught me off guard because I didn't go in prepared for what I was about to experience. And so I've had a couple of days to process it, and I'm going to win this person over. And the way I'm going to win them over is the essence of what I'm going to do is just simply get on another call with them and say, what would you like to see happen? And they're going to say, well, I want this. And they might be kind of in a gruff voice. I want this and I want this. Okay, so if I do all those things for you, that would satisfy you? Well, yeah. Okay, great. And if I can make those things happen, I'm going to agree to that, because what I've learned is a person won't disagree with themselves. And if I'm focusing on what they want, and this is like, if you were on the call and heard the level of conflict, you'd think these people are never going to get along for the rest of their life. And I'm going to just diffuse it, like snap my fingers and just diffuse it by using that type of an approach. And the other thing I wanted to do was you said something that's really powerful, and I want to say it from a different way, and that is to implement the ideas that you're teaching. And so you said something to me two decades ago, and the essence of it was, before you deliver your sales presentation, figure out the success stories you're going to tell in the order you're going to tell them in. And you might have said the words a little different, but that was the essence. And so for all of you listening, because of who Dr. Moine is for me, and I recognize his brilliance, his value, his expertise, I don't need to question that. My coach told me do this, so I just did that. And I've used that technique several thousand times. It has impacted, millions and millions of dollars in revenue. And so it's that simple. So identify so I'm telling all of you listening right now, identify the success stories you're going to tell in the order that you're going to tell them in. And some of these stories, you'll tell the same story again and again and again and again and again. It'll be new for the prospect because you're talking to a new prospect, but you'll have mastered that storytelling technique. And, you've taught me hundreds of things through the years that have landed to the point of implementation. And I want to come back to storytelling in a moment, but I want to make one other point about characteristics of sales superstars, because I think one of the things that it's more unique than not with how you coach. I've been with you since the 1990s, and I know Tony Martinez has, and I know you have many clients that have been with you for years and years and years, where I think a lot of coaching relationships, it's like, it's a 1-year agreement or it's a 6-month agreement. It's like, okay, I got what I needed to get. Now I got to move on to another coach. I never looked at it like that. I looked at it like, I'm going to coach with you as long as you're willing to coach with me. This is a lifelong relationship. Like, that's what I want. If you're up for it, so my mindset was never completion. And I've never looked at it. I've never looked at it as completion. And I think that's an interesting thing about longevity. Could you just speak to that about, you have had, several clients that have been with you for many years, and perhaps maybe what you see as the benefit when they stay with you for a long period of time?
Well, I think it depends on the coach and the student. Something that I do that's a little bit different is that, because I'm constantly working with super achievers in a variety of fields, I'm constantly learning. And I kind of I have different ways I look at myself. We all have mental pictures of ourselves, and one of them is I'm kind of like a honeybee, that I go from one flower to the next, and I learn things in certain fields that I can bring to other fields where they're relatively unknown. So I was working with someone yesterday and they said, well, Dr. Moine, I'm really surprised. I've been working with you for several years. You've never shared that with me. I said, well, the reason I never shared it with you, I'm not holding anything back. I just learned that myself last week. So you have to have something new to bring to the table. And I had an interesting day on Sunday. I woke up on Sunday and I thought, well, I'm going to make a little bit of money today because I help people with writing projects. I'm helping one of my clients write a book right now. So I was going to do some work on the book, make a little bit of money. But then I had 2 emergency calls from clients who said, Dr. Moine, I got to talk to you. I'm on the verge of closing the big sale. Will you please work with me on a Sunday? I said, yeah, I'll work with you. They know my rates, which, for them, it's $500 an hour. And one of them was a real estate agent back in the Northeast who has a chance to get his biggest listing ever, which is $3.5 million. It's a guy who is the homeowner is a retired state senator and a retired judge, 83-year-old gentleman. And I was going through, what have your presentations been like? So far, he's never been able to get into the house. This guy has, get this, folks, he has a 10,000 square foot house on 110 acres.
Wow.
It's if this was in my neighborhood, it would be like a $25 million house, but it's in Maryland. And he only is able to talk to him on the phone. So he parks outside of the guy's house. And so I gave him some strategies for getting into the guy's house and start, having a really warm relationship with him, sort of disarming him. But then I said, your whole focus has been on real estate. That's the way real estate agents talk. It's square footage, it's amenities, it's improvements, it's the land value, et cetera. All of that's very important. But I said, you need to talk to him about his dreams. You need to say, what's the next house after you sell this beautiful house? Are you guys going to stay in the neighborhood? Are you going to move to Florida? Are you going to move to South Carolina? What are your dreams? And and this is something I learned from working with a lot of financial planners, a lot of financial advisors, is you have to talk to people about what is the purpose of the money? What are you going to do with the money? Because money is just numbers and zeros. It's pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents. And he said, Dr. Moine, can I really talk to him about like that? Can I really ask him about his dreams and his wife's dreams? And I said, absolutely. It's just foreign to people, maybe not to everyone in real estate, but to him, it was a whole new language. It's like I was teaching him Spanish or French. So I think that's one of the reasons, Eric, we've been together, is that you're constantly learning new things. I listen in on some of the shows that you do. You bring in referral experts, you bring in networking experts, you're constantly meeting. Eric doesn't just work with me. You guys who are on his list, Eric is he's the honeybee also. He's meeting and working with the ultimate coach, Steve Hardison, and so he's getting into the being movement. Who are you being at this time? So we are kindred spirits like that. We are lifelong learners. We're lifelong students. So many people think, oh, when I graduate from college or, in sales, you don't have to even be a college graduate. I have some of my students, I'm not going to mention any names. Eric mentioned names of a couple of them, but, who are making a few $1 million a year in personal income. They never graduate from college. It doesn't matter. That's one of the things I love about sales. It's the ultimate democratic profession. If you can sell, if you can build a deep human relationship, if you could communicate value, find out the person's needs, satisfy those needs, the academic credentials don't really matter. So it's open to anyone, any race, any age. Maybe there's still a little bit of prejudice. We need to open it up a little bit more, but of all the professions, it's, I think, the most democratic. So I think that's part of what explains the longevity. And Eric, it's why I think you are going to be, for many people, you're going to be their coach for 20 or 30 years, is because you're constantly learning. You're not teaching. Zig Ziglar did some great stuff in the 60s and 70s. I love his stuff. But, it's what it is. It's kind of a little fixed body of knowledge. And what we have is an open model. We're kind of like Web 3.0. We're kind of like a Wikipedia. We just keep adding to the knowledge base, making it richer and richer.
Fantastic. Well, what I want to do now, I want to promote a couple things,
Okay.
some of our books,
Okay.
and I want to bring back an idea that we've discussed in the past, and I want it to be on the podcast because if we end up doing this idea, anybody listening to this podcast, they're going to want to be a part of this idea that I want to bring back up. So one is, this is the Continuous Sales Improvement podcast, and it's the Continuous Sales Improvement book. So if you don't have the book yet, I encourage you to get it. And then we have the Continuous Sales Improvement community, and that's on Facebook, and it's totally free. So if you're on Facebook, you can come and join the Continuous Sales Improvement Facebook group, and we'd love to have you there. I also have the Continuous Sales Improvement daily podcast. And so that's something up there.
Right here next to my computer, of course.
Fantastic.
The Bible. This is the Bible.
So I also have the Continuous Sales Improvement daily podcast, which is a little 15-minute daily motivational that I do in addition to these interviews. Why don't you talk about Unlimited Selling Power, and just briefly talk about that book that was a breakthrough in selling.
It really was, folks. That's this book right here, Unlimited Selling Power. The subtitle is kind of scary for some people. Unlimited Selling Power. The subtitle is How to Master Hypnotic Selling Skills. I wrote this with another one of my partners, Dr. Kenneth Lloyd, who at the time was a professor at UCLA School of Management. Ken specializes in management psychology. He's a PhD psychologist like myself. In 1983, with my partner John Hurd in Detroit, I wrote Modern Persuasion Strategies, The Hidden Advantage in Selling, which was translated into over a dozen foreign languages. That was the first book ever on neuro-linguistic programming applied to master salesmanship. And it sold a lot of copies. And about 10 years later, Ken Lloyd and I decided to take it the step further. The next step beyond NLP is what is called mesmerizing selling. And when we talk about indirect hypnosis, you have to understand this. You should write some things down. We're not talking about Las Vegas style hypnosis where you tell someone you're getting sleepy, your eyes are getting heavy, your eyelids are you're feeling drowsy, you're dropping down deeper and deeper into sleep. You're so relaxed. It's not like clinical hypnosis or Las Vegas style hypnosis is entertainment hypnosis. It's amusing. We all enjoy it. You get someone to bark like a dog, or you get them to eat an onion and they think it's an apple. This is serious hypnosis, and it's all indirect. It's conversational. It makes use of things like fascinating, mesmerizing storytelling techniques. All great salespeople use stories, metaphors, word pictures. All great politicians use stories. Donald Trump's he had two major persuasion techniques that he uses. One of them is stories, and the other one is hypnotic repetition. If you listen to a 45-minute speech, probably close to half of it, he's almost word for word repeating sentences he said before. And he has what I call his greatest hits, like build the wall, lock her up. And whether you love him or hate him, and this is just the linguistics of how he does what he does, which Joe Biden has not mastered, by the way. He does not. He's a great guy in his own way. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. I'm not a political person, but Joe Biden is just not a real effective communicator. His heart's in the right place, but he's not real skilled with words. So this book, it was selected by Success Magazine as being one of the top 10 sales books of all time, because we really lay out the linguistics of mesmerizing communication. I analyze some of Ronald Reagan's speeches. We go beyond sales in there. And we have chapters, for example, one of the chapters is on the 7 most powerful types of sales stories: money stories, peace of mind stories, pleasure stories. It's easy to figure out how to use pleasure stories when you're selling a trip to Hawaii or a vacation in the Caribbean. But how do you use pleasure stories if you're selling computers or selling robots or widgets, or, so we show you how to do that. And there's a bunch of other types of stories. We actually give examples. We have two very powerful chapters on mesmerizing sales scripting techniques. Some of you folks think, oh, I don't use scripts. I don't believe in scripts. I believe in being authentic, being myself. Folks, we all use scripts. A script is simply an organized collection of words. That's the scientific definition. That's the psycholinguistic definition. If you organize your words, you're using a script. The only alternative to scripting is what is called glossolalia, which is basically nonsense. It's gobbledygook. If you talk like this: up, down, computer, paper, glasses, pen, if you just randomly put words together, that's not a script. But nobody speaks like that. You can't make it in business if you speak like that. So you're already organizing words. The only question is, how powerful is your organization of words? How interesting, how fascinating, how involving is that organization of words? Why not make it even better? Why not make every word count? And you don't have to follow scripts word for word. No one has to know you're using a script. You can actually have a polished, powerful script that you know is going to work, and you can put in ums and ahs, you can pause, you can scratch your cheek like you're just thinking of this for the first time. And they work like magic, because it's a proven formula that works for selling this type of product or service to this type of person. So it's like anything else in life. The organized people are the winners. The people who are prepared, like in athletics, the people who are prepared more than others are the ones who win. I want to share with you just a quick story. I told you I'm always learning new things. This is a story you've never heard, Eric, because I just learned it on Monday of this week. I woke up. I'm a kind of an early riser. I get up about 5 o'clock most mornings, and Eric is an early riser too. He does a 7:45 podcast in the morning. So it's about 5 o'clock, and I'm putting away the dishes in the kitchen, and I like to watch Bloomberg Television. That's my new favorite financial show. And they were reading people's names on this show. And I turned to another ABC News or some other thing, and they're reading people's names, long list of names. Like, what's going on here? I was still half asleep, hadn't had any coffee yet. And I remembered, oh my goodness, it's 9/11. And it struck me really hard, because I had some clients in the World Trade Center. I was working with Oppenheimer, which is a big financial services firm. And fortunately, none of the people I was working with died on that day. The towers came down because they travel a lot, and they were all traveling. But I was thinking about all the people who died. It was really, it hit me kind of hard, because I knew people in New York, and I was thinking about all the people who died, and I realized that insurance companies had to make big payouts on that day for all the people who died, in the coming weeks. And I decided to do some research on this. How much money did they have to pay out? Because over 3,000 people died. And one of the things I can tell you about the World Trade Centers, if you were never there, some of the most expensive real estate in New York, which is to say some of the most expensive real estate in the world, that was the World Trade Centers. The people who worked there made a lot of money. Poor people did not rent office space in World Trade Center. And they were paid a lot of money. They pulled down big salaries. A lot, people like Goldman Sachs, a lot of financial firms were there, prestigious law firms. So these are not people with small insurance policies. They didn't have $500,000 or $1 million life insurance policies. They had $3 million policies, $5 million, $10 million life insurance policies. I was thinking, wow, the insurance companies were not prepared for this. They're going to have to pay out all this money. And it was very hard to do research on it. But I actually, let me look at my notes here just very briefly. Okay, it was Northwestern Mutual. I was able to find information on Northwestern Mutual. They insure a lot of high net worth people, very successful people. Eric, they had 141 people die when the World Trade Center came down. 141 big policies. So they got together, their executives all got together, and they were trying to figure out how much their loss was going to be, how much they were going to have to pay out. And so you start going through what you need to do to give a payout. Let me quiz you here, Eric. What do you need to do to give a payout? What does someone need to produce to get a payout on an insurance policy?
I guess a death certificate.
What's that?
A death certificate?
Yeah, a death certificate. Okay, very good. And what's the other thing?
The policy.
Not necessarily, because the company has the policy, but It doesn't hurt to have the policy. What else do you need?
Beneficiary.
That's in the policy.
Okay, what is it?
I'll give you a hint. Eric. It's a big thing. Required by law. A body. You need a body.
Okay. Gotcha.
You need a body. Okay. So the two big things are death certificate and body. And the thing is, they don't issue a death certificate unless they have a body. So they brought in their lawyers, and they're looking at all this money they're going to have to pay out, because some of the people were in their 30s. They expected these people to live and keep paying every year on the policy until they're, 85, 90 years old. That's how the insurance company makes their money, is they collect all the premiums, they invest them. And the lawyer said, you don't have to pay out until you get a body. You're not going to get a lot of these bodies. You're not going to get a lot of death certificates. Don't worry about it. And the executives looked at each other and they said, wow, we are Northwest Mutual. We have a proud history. We've been around for over 100 years. We care about our policyholders. And they said, you know what? We're going to pay this money out. We don't have to pay it out. And they said, we're not just going to pay it out. We're going to expedite it. We're going to contact these families, and we are going to, within 5 days later, and insurance companies never work this fast. They always do investigations. They check the fingerprints. Is it the right body? Within 5 days, they FedExed massive checks to the surviving family members of the people that they lost. And I thought, man, that is such a powerful story. If I was with Northwest Mutual, I would be telling this story every September, the whole month of September, not just on 9/11, to all my prospects, all my clients. This is who we are. This is how we walk in the world. This is how we roll. This is our integrity. It's about, folks, write this down in your notes. Integrity, values. It's about your values. They're buying you. When people sign up for sales training with Eric or with me, it's also about our integrity, about showing up, about values. And they want to know you're going to be there to take care of them if something goes wrong. And like Eric said, he had this conflict with this person last week he was not prepared for. And he's going to make it right. Eric said, I am going to do what it takes to make it right. So it's going to be, some people would have just been freaked out by that. Oh, this is terrible. It's horrible. He's yelling at me. He's treating me this way. Eric's turning it into a learning experience. And the point I want to make in sharing that story with you is that we all have stories like that in our lives. It's not 9/11, but I want you to think, I want you to search through your life experience about a time you stepped up, a time you helped another human being. You helped a client of yours. You went above and beyond. You did something you weren't paid for. You went the extra mile. Folks, most salespeople don't do that. They don't realize how powerful that is. And it can make all the difference in the world. People don't just care about your product or your service. They want to know, who are you? Who is the person I'm having this relationship with? There were some terrible fires in California, the Paradise Fire, a couple of years ago that destroyed an entire community. Eric stepped up. Eric drove all the way up there with his wife, and he said, "What can I do?" And Eric set up a charity, and he delivered 132 brand new beds to that community. That was, it was largely trailers, mobile homes. And he did so much more for those people. I've had moments where I have stepped up. This is the time of year I give money to charities, and I've started writing the checks. So folks, think about what you can do. This is not a tricky sales technique. This is a technique for being a quality human being, but it can lead to many more sales. And then share that story at the appropriate time with other people.
Well, a couple of things just to piggyback on that story you were ending with about the fire in Paradise. What my wife and I ended up doing was creating a Facebook group, and the group went viral. 34,000 people joined the group. And the bed story is Ashley Furniture wanted to donate $50,000 of beds to the fire survivors. And they went to Salvation Army and said, "Hey, will you help us distribute the beds?" And Salvation Army said, "We don't do that." So Ashley Furniture came to me. I'm a civilian with a Facebook group. And they asked me, Dr. Moine, to distribute $50,000 in beds. And there was many, many miracles like that happened, which we don't have time for today. But it was, that is a story that speaks about who I am as a human being, where I was donating my time. And my wife and I, we donated an entire year of our lives. It was basically a second full-time job helping strangers that needed help. And so before we wrap up, the idea that I teased about earlier in the podcast that we discussed before is I want to do some work with you where we record your content into courses. And I want to put the courses in my membership website and work out a joint venture where once the courses are created, it's done, and I'll just handle all of it. Okay. And so for all of you listening, and Dr. Moine, we haven't agreed to this, it's just an idea, but for all of you listening, if we end up doing this, I'm talking about having Dr. Moine deliver his best content on closing, and you guys having access to that best content on referrals, storytelling, NLP and selling, sales negotiation. And these are things that he has, developed profound ideas over 40 years of his career that only people that were working with him one-on-one or people that studied his books could get access to. And so that's a seed that I'll plant just so all the listeners can be, if we end up doing that, they can be excited about, getting that membership website to get access to your content. And the last thing I wanted to ask you is, this is just more for one of those short YouTube videos, right? Because the title of the video is really valuable as far as people wanting to watch it. So if I said, I will say, what is your number one idea for somebody to close more sales? If they want to increase their closing, what's a short answer idea? Best idea on how to close more sales, you would say what?
Well, two things come to mind. One of them is what we talked about earlier. Find their desired state. Find their desired outcome. What would have to happen? What would you need to hear? What would you need to see for you to say this has been one of the greatest meetings that you've ever had? If you're doing coaching, for example, or even if you're selling a product or a service, what would you need to see, to have, to experience that would totally satisfy you? And then do everything you can to help them reach that state, because Folks, about 30 years ago, I was interviewed by the CIA, and I was considering working for the CIA. They have a center that studies mind control and brainwashing, and they study world leaders. And we had a whole series of interviews in a top secret location here in Los Angeles. And one of the things they told me from their research is that people cannot resist their own ideas. Write that down. 5-star idea. People cannot resist their own ideas. So you want to find out their ideas, their values. You sell people within their values, because people have to be internally consistent just to maintain their sanity. I'm a PhD psychologist, and you cannot be at war with yourself. So you want to do more listening. The whole focus for a lot of salespeople is just talking. And really, you don't learn much of anything when you talk. You want to ask them a series of friendly, polite questions. Show genuine interest and fascination in this other human being who's in front of you, who's sharing their life with you. And most people are like an open book. It's just amazing how much they will share with you. When I was flying back and forth regularly to New York to train stockbrokers, I would it was interesting to me to sit down on planes next to different people. And because I was flying a lot then, I frequently was able to upgrade to first class or business class. And so you meet some really interesting people. You can always meet interesting people on the airplane. And so I would, if they were talkative, I would like to engage them in conversation. And I would just ask them a series of questions. And I heard people's entire life stories. I actually learned a lesson. I learned, don't tell them I'm a psychologist, because then it's like opening the dam. They just won't stop talking about their marriage or this or that. And frequently by the time we arrived in New York, I knew their whole life story. And what amazed me is that there are so many people that ask me relatively few questions about me. So I knew everything about them, and they knew almost nothing about me, because it's not that I wouldn't have said that's none of your business. I probably would have answered. But they just didn't bother to ask. So folks, just ask. You will be amazed at what people will tell you. So those are a couple of techniques. And Eric, I want to do this program with you because I'm getting older now. And I really believe you and I have a few videos out on YouTube. A couple of them have gotten to be very popular, and I want to memorialize my work. I have books out, but folks, as great as these books are, there's a limited amount you can learn from books, and there's nothing better than actually hearing it and seeing it demonstrated. And that's what Eric and I can do for you, is we can not just tell you about the techniques, but we can actually share different story forms with you. Trust building techniques are so vitally important. I think a lot of people blow the sale because they just don't establish a deep enough level of trust. I have a saying: no trust equals no sale. You can have the best product in the world, the best service in the world. If you don't have enough trust, they're not going to buy. So Eric, what I want to do is actually demonstrate. I don't want to just talk about it, but I want to give them some exercises, because they have to practice it. They can't just see us do it and say, wow, that looks easy, or I'll try that someday. But we want to encourage them to actually go out in the real world, have some fun, use it. And because that's what convinces people. That's what, when Eric rose from being the last producer and then to making quota the next month, 10,000 a month, and then 50,000 a month. And then a few months later, he's bringing in 160,000 a month in sales. It's because he used the techniques. He reported back to me what worked, what didn't work. And then we customized it, and we made it better and better and more powerful, more and more and more and more powerful. So I'm looking forward to doing that, Eric. We're going to make that happen.
Well, just to speak to that. So my new branding, as you know, is continuous sales improvement. Mm-hmm. And it's an integrated strategy modeled after what Steve Jobs did at Apple called the digital hub strategy, mm-hmm. where he connected the phone with the watch, with the video, with the app, with the computer. And I looked at that and I said, okay, how can I apply the digital hub strategy to my sales training business? And I said, center everything around this concept of continuous sales improvement. And it's our podcast, what we're doing right now. It's the Facebook group, it's this, it's that. And a piece of that is the membership website. So I'm loading up the membership website with my content, but I started thinking about, if we put your content and my content in, that creates the world's greatest collection of sales ideas in a membership website that exists in the world, because it's not just the content, it's the work that I'm doing. I have a living, breathing community that's motivating people to want to go and actually go through the modules. So it's not just modules that nobody's going and studying. And bringing your content in there, I believe that would create the greatest existing membership website for sales training content that's ever existed. And potentially, hundreds of thousands of subscribers could be in there monthly, enjoying this content and getting massive ROI on these ideas. So we can have a follow-up discussion and really flush out that idea. But I think it could just be a tremendous gift to the sales field, as well as, it being financially successful and a tremendous win-win for the subscribers, because they're able to get the content without having to, pay hundreds of dollars an hour to get access to the content for those that can't afford you or afford me.
Yep. And a benefit to our society, because, folks, there's a lot of people who are really suffering right now. Inflation is hitting all of us. And I think last month, year-over-year inflation was 8.3%. We have skyrocketing interest rates. Mortgage rates are around 6%. Next week, Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Open Market Reserve Committee, FOMC, they're going to raise interest rates at least another 75 basis points to 1%. So we could be looking at mortgage rates of around 7%. And they're going to have one more interest rate increase later this year. We have not had this in 40 years. Most people who are alive today have never lived through a rising interest rate environment. And the Federal Reserve has said that we are likely to have high inflation for the next 10 years. It's destroyed. Wow. I don't know if you're working, Eric, with anyone in the mortgage field, but it's destroyed the mortgage market. They have had layoffs of over 50,000 mortgage brokers around the country, and they're shutting down mortgage companies. They're really hurting, and that's affecting real estate. In some areas, 30 to 40% of sales that were under contract are falling apart because people can't get financing. They can't qualify for financing. Mortgage rates have doubled this year as compared to where they were in January. So our economy is really hurting. A lot of people are hurting. And so part of this, is giving back to help our country. And inflation is a worldwide problem. We're going to get people. Last year, Eric and I, we did a 1-year-long coaching program. We had a wonderful guy, Timothy from Singapore. We had a lady from Canada, people from all over the United States. And, this is going to strengthen the world economy, which helps everybody. So I'm excited, Eric. I'm pumped. I'm in. Sign me up, and we'll make the time to do it. You're really busy. I'm really busy, but we'll just start, producing these videos one by one, and helping folks out. And we're going to learn something from it. That's the thing. The other thing that keeps me going is because Eric and I are both, lifetime students. When you teach, the amazing thing is, I want to encourage all of you out there to teach something. Teach Sunday school. I don't care what it is. Coach basketball, for the youth league. But when you teach, you actually, believe it or not, you learn more than the students because of the preparation that you do. And you have to organize ideas. And you think, wow, it's going to take me 2 hours to cover this. How can I boil this down into 20 minutes? So you process that knowledge so much more deeply. And the big secret is that the teacher learns more than the students. But we all learn, we all learn and grow together. So that's my final idea for the day is put your hand on your heart, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hand on your heart. I want you to anchor this in. This is from neuro-linguistic programming. I want you to say this with great feeling and emotion. I am a teacher.
I am a teacher.
I am a teacher. Now say this one. I am a guide.
I am a guide.
I am a guide.
I am a guide.
And then the last one is I am a great mentor. So let's, everyone around the world, put your hand on your heart and really anchor this in and really believe it. Convince yourself of this. I am a great mentor.
I am a great mentor.
And one more time with feeling. I am a great mentor.
I am a great mentor.
I believe you, Eric, and I believe all of you out there. Eric, I'm going to let you wrap it up.
Well, this has just been wonderful to spend this time with you, Dr. Moine. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with my audience, the community. That's going to wrap up another great edition of the Continuous Sales Improvement Podcast. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. A great, successful sales day, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, make sure and subscribe to get notified of new episodes each week. And check out our other great episodes by going to continuoussalesimprovement.com. That's continuoussalesimprovement.com. And while you're there, pick up Chapter 1 totally free of my new book, Continuous Sales Improvement. Just opt in when you go to the website. Until next time, keep on improving. I'll see you in the next episode.